From thwarting democracy at home to scowling at it abroad, you can always count on the American left to stand with the dictators, at least if they're anti-American. Upon Fidel Castro's death, Jimmy Carter remarked that he and Rosalind remembered fondly their visits with him in Cuba and his love of his country. Obama continued that democratic tradition, attending a baseball game with Raul, extolling Cuba's achievements in education and health care. And the media even gets in the game. You know, who could forget Barbara Walters' fawning 2020 interview with Castro? That was a classic. So it should come as no surprise that with the Democratic protests spilling out this weekend, the media, well, they look for a Cuban scapegoat.
There's no question that the pandemic has made everything much worse.
People there are outraged over the country's coronavirus response.
Their life has become intolerable during the pandemic.
But the New York Times might have had the best reaction, writing that the protests were shouting freedom and other anti-government slogans. Something tells me the Times was just being honest about where they stood. Joining me now, former Secretary of State, Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, the reaction from the media, the Democrats, the left, has been, I think, quite revealing to people who've forgotten that they were doing the same kind of thing, you know, with the Soviet Union back in the 80s when I was in college.
Yes, Laura, thanks for having me on the show. It's absolutely the case. They've pointed the finger at COVID. The Cubans have pointed the finger at the Americans. The truth is, this is about communism. This is about socialism. This is about people demanding freedom. They know that the lives of their families won't be better next generation. They know that their country was designated by me as a state sponsor of terror. They know that things aren't good. The conditions of the evil leadership and the communist dictates of that leadership have spoiled their lives, and they want freedom. You see them waving not only Cuban flags, but American flags. These are people who understand. And if you've seen anybody down in Florida who left Cuba, those exiles that are now living in America, they know freedom. They know the reality of it. They know the benefits of it. They know why it matters to their soul and their pocketbook. It's all the Cuban people are asking for. This isn't about the coronavirus. This isn't about an American plot. This is about the Cuban people demanding that their leadership fundamentally change their ways.
But, Mr. Secretary, they did kind of the same thing, did they not, during the Hong Kong protests? There was a very muted reaction by the elites here in the United States. Obviously, we pointed out what the sports community was doing, which was thwarting real support of what was happening in Hong Kong. But that's a huge issue there. Now, this is not really surprising, is it, to anyone who's seen what they've done over the years?
Not at all, Laura. It is the case that the left has always cozied up to Marxists and communists, right? They've always played footsie with them. They haven't seen the evil that's perpetrated by them. They slough it off. Sometimes they'll even go so far as to say, boy, that system works pretty good, right? This is what they said about the Chinese Communist Party. They said, wow, they handled COVID really well. We know what communism does to countries. We know what it does to the souls of people. I don't understand why the Democrats are silent on this today. This is an important opportunity for the Cuban people. The American people need to stand alongside them. There are so many things we can do to help them gain this very freedom that they're on the streets demanding it at enormous personal risk. We need to be with the Cuban people. The Trump administration had the right end of the stick. We put enormous pressure on the Cuban leadership. I hope the Biden team won't release the pressure that we had on the Cuban leadership. That pressure, plus the freedom demands of these people, is likely to lead to a really good outcome for Cuba, and as a result, a really good outcome for the security of America as well.
But, Mr. Secretary, isn't it the case that this administration thinks conservatives in the United States who wave the American flag, not on Memorial Day or 4th of July, but fly it all the time, or heaven forbid off a boat or something, they're the bigger threat to the United States? They're domestic terrorists or approaching that much bigger threat than a communist, dictatorship in Cuba or maybe even China. At this point, I mean, look at the effort they're putting into January 6th. I mean, if only they put that effort into, changing things in Cuba.
The irony there, Laura, is that they often say that they're the team that loves human rights, and yet we can see the human rights that are being violated there. And we know these same people would love nothing more than to come to the United States of America, the same place that these Democrats are denigrating. That very flag that they are denigrating is the very flag that the Cuban people so desperately want to have on their side. It shouldn't escape us, this hypocrisy. It is dangerous when the Democrats undermine our republic. We can do better. I'm confident the American people can see that. And if we get this right, we'll improve the rights of people all across the world, and America will be safer and more secure. I'm rooting for the Cuban people today.
You bet. Great people. And White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Secretary Pompeo, she seemed a bit stumped by, truth be told, a very difficult question. Watch.
Does the administration support international protesters flying the American flag?
The president certainly values and respects the symbol of the American flag. He's someone who certainly waves it outside of his house, or does in Delaware and other places where he's lived throughout his time. But he also believes that people have the right to peaceful protests, and he thinks both can be true.
How difficult is it just to say the American flag is the greatest symbol of freedom on earth? I mean, that seems like it's hard for them to say that.
It's really straightforward and pretty darn simple. And when you see her dance around in that way, you can tell she's nervous about answering a question about whether she's nervous about answering a question about the American flag. The other tell, Laura, is that when folks denigrate our flag and diminish America, they won't call out their own team, right? They won't call out Bernie Sanders when he says, no, Cuba's a great place, has a great healthcare system. Won't call out AOC or the Squad when they undermine American values. That's a real tell. It means that they are uncomfortable at best, and they might mouth the right words for a moment, but they're not going to defend it with all the glory that it deserves.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for being with us tonight.